What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What's the loudest you've ever been yelled at?
Oh man. Okay, I'll tell you the story. So, I don't ever told the story before. John Matsko was our offensive line coach one year with the Panthers in 2011. He stayed for a long time. He's actually a really good offensive line coach, which makes sort of the way he is sometimes interesting. But he was big into he liked to fight. He's an old school coach. He coached in, the Rams, the Super Bowl winning fastest show on turf Ram. He's coached a long time in the NFL, John. And he's old school guy. He liked to fight in practice. Like that was his thing. Like he wanted one a day, right? And I'm not a big fight guy. I've been in a couple of them, but I wasn't playing well, all right, in camp. And I ended up having a back injury that we found out a couple weeks later. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna start a fight today to get on my coach's good side. Okay, so start a fight. It goes like a fight does, whatever. And you could tell afterwards he was like, attaboy, Schwartz, good job, okay? And we get to the meeting room, and you know this on film. Maybe you have different film than we get because you might get a different cut than we get as a scout, but they don't show the fights on film. They don't do that, right? At practice.
Yeah, the play ends and they cut it.
The play ends and they cut it.
Yeah.
So all you see on this play is I'm blocking the linebacker as Dan Connor, a good buddy of mine who, when I played with the NFL, we drafted the same year, and I take him and after play, I shove him late, right? Very clearly, F you, let's get after it. I turn around to walk away. He shoves me in the back and the film cuts off. Now, everyone knew that we started a huge fight. It happened. Well, Matsko, for some reason, man, he cussed me out. I've never been cussed out in my entire life because he said I didn't fight him. He didn't see that fight in me. And I was so angry because he clearly knew I fought him. He saw it happen. He was calling me all sorts of names. And I was in the point of tears. I was so angry, John, because I did what you wanted me to do. I fought. I don't ever do this. I did it to get on your good side. And then afterwards he did the thing where he's like, hey, Schwartz, stay after the meeting. Okay. And he pulls me aside. He goes, I know you fought that guy. I just did that for effect for the rest of the room. I was like, what the, bro, what are we doing? So I got cussed out for something that I didn't even do wrong. I fought the guy. I did what he asked me to do. Otherwise I never got cussed out that much personally. I think I played in the NFL for so long. I played 8 years. I was hurt a bunch. And a lot of guys in my 7th round pick don't play as long as I did with all the injuries. Unless you're a good teammate, right? Unless you're a guy that can be trusted in the locker room, a guy that coach can put you in. Look, I wasn't the best player, John, but I didn't make the coach look stupid, right? So the coaches never had a reason to yell at me. Yeah, coaches get angry and you give up a sack or had a mental error, but that wasn't my game. I didn't make mental errors. I might've gotten beat. That happens, right? It's football, but I never gave a coach a reason to really cuss me out. There was never a point where they felt they had to say that to me. And I was you could talk to me. We can have conversation. You don't have to cuss me out. I get your point if you just talk. So I think coaches it never got to a point where I ever had to be yelled at that way. And the one time I got yelled at that way, I actually did what I was supposed to do, which was the guy pushed me late and we started a fight in practice.
That's what I think's the hard part about the draft season for so many people that talk about it. Having seen both sides, and listen, I love talking about it as much as the next guy. But unless you know the wiring of the guy, that is such a huge factor because most teams, most players in the NFL aren't doing things like Deebo Samuel or Tyreek. Most of the players are just solid guys, solid starters. Yeah. And the intelligence, how coaches, gravitate towards you, how you act, just are you easy? I don't need to worry about you, is something that never gets talked about on the outside and gets talked about all the time on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, it's I actually asked a college coach this recently, how do you recruit these kids? Because it's a different time now with college kids. He said exactly what you said. He goes, I try to understand who they are because I need a certain type of guy in my team. And that's the hardest part, is figuring out who the player is outside of football. I can watch all these highlights. I know who they are as a player on the field, but how do I figure out if they're going to fit in my locker room? I'm going to figure out if they're going to be able to fight and battle and claw and do things I have to do, or I have to get them to do to win a championship. And yeah, like you don't know the makeup, but I will say, I mean, all the background stuff now these guys do. I mean, I feel like they sort of know, right? I mean,
they have a pretty good idea.
I mean, and there's I think you might have been in Philly when Watkins was drafted, right? The offensive lineman.
Yeah,
like it's
we had
hard.
bad intel on that one.
Yeah, but John, like I think it's just hard to know. Like it's really like I think as much as you try to know, guys come in the league, and it's hard to play professional sports, and some guys they just break. It is what it is. And you might think and then you don't, and but I certainly think I always tell like young players, like my advice is to basically just be liked. Like make sure that people in the building like you, because that does go a long way. And people in the NFL talk. Like if you're a fringe player and they like you, you might stick around a little bit longer, or they tell someone else that, and if you're an asshole and you can't play football, like you're out of there immediately. No one, there are guys, this, there's players now that when you think to yourself, like, why is that player not signed? They need enough money. That's just personality. They don't like their personality.
I think that's like good life advice. I would even add, be liked and try hard. Like if people feel like you're giving everything you have and trying hard and you're well liked, like obviously you have, to get to the NFL, you have to have the talent, but you're going to stick around longer than the guy. Yeah, we kind of like him and we don't even think he's working very hard because, like this time right now, right? Most teams have give or take 40 days off. Yeah. Like I would imagine most, especially veteran guys, younger players, who knows, but like Christian McCaffrey's working out today. Yes. Right. Patrick Mahomes, like TJ Watt, yeah. I mean, this is very, very serious how you approach this.
Well, John, I find it so funny. I think guys are doing it less and less now, but you see players be like rise and grind in the offseason. I'm like, buddy,
Russell Wilson used to do that.
Your job is just to work out. Like, it ain't that hard. It ain't that deep. Like, get your 2-hour workout in, get your recovery in, eat right today, and do it again tomorrow. Like, I'm like, your job is your body. Like, this is our job, right? You're supposed to work out. You're supposed to eat well. Let's take care of yourself. Yeah, you can party a little bit. You can enjoy the life that you've created for yourself, but it's not that deep. It's not like rise and grind and like I'm in the factory at 6 a.m. Like, that's your actual job. That's your job. Like, can you imagine if you were like rise and grind, got to record a podcast? That's your job, is to record a podcast. It's not like a special. Yes, our job is to make sure that we train to play football, and it does take a couple of years to figure out what that path is. Right, a lot of as a young player, you feel great as a young player. You don't think you need any help, and but as you get older, you figure out your path. You find a trainer you like, a workout facility. You find a nutritionist you like, or some sort of meal program. You find a rehab person you like, and but you have to put in the work, right? I mean, I think a lot of players figure that out as they go, because I think a lot of us when we're young, like you think and then you have a year or you have a game when you just get your butt kicked and you figure out like, oh, that doesn't work. I got to try something else. And the guys that adapt the best figure it out.
I've heard you tell this story before, but obviously you played for Andy Reid. Your brother played for him for a long time. Is like after a win or a loss, all these stories about Belichick, the way he handles his meetings, cussing guys out and just being, Andy is, would you say, pretty consistent and normal and not a huge overreactor, win or lose any game?
Dude, it's 1-minute team meetings. It's like the absolute best. He has a note card. I have a note card here. He just has a note card. He just like picks it up and he goes.
Did that in Philly too.
That's it. Like he just reads off. He's like, all right, guys, well, we lost. Got to play better next time. Talk to your coaches about it. Okay, we got practice in an hour. Tomorrow's off. Make sure you get your body worked on. All right, ready, break. Like, that's it. That was it. The longest meeting we ever had was the first one of training camp, which is like the compliance meeting. Yeah. And then that was it. Like, and that's what I think players appreciate about Andy Reid. There's a lot of things players appreciate, but it's the consistency, which the way he handles his business, right? And I think he treats us like, it sounds cliche, but like professionals, right? Like, we know we lost. Like, we know we lost, John. No one wants to lose. Losing sucks. No one. That's the worst thing that can happen in the building, right? Like everyone in the building is affected when you lose, from the lowest person at the entire organization to the general manager, the ownership, like everyone in that building is depressed for days if you lose. Like it stinks to lose. We know that. We know that we have played poorly or someone made a mistake. Like there's no point in, and look, there's different ways. Obviously, the Belichick way worked for so many years. But it only works, by the way, if you win. If you lose and you act like that, you lose your locker room immediately. But Andy Reid was just very consistent with that message, right? Like we're going to work. I think a misconception about Andy Reid is that he works the players, man. It's a little bit different now when different rules for training camp and different rules for practice. But this, man, when I got signed by the Chiefs in 2013, we didn't have double this. I got a call from a couple Eagles I knew, and they're like, "Be ready, buddy. Be ready for training camp." I'm like, "What do you mean be ready?" He goes, just be ready for training camp. And this is with single practices. And I was like, and I got there, had a couple of them, like, I text those guys, like, "Yep, you were right." Like, and it's after he still live tackles in practice and training camp, which, like, can you imagine if Kyle Shanahan live tackled in practice? Like, you would,
No.
these guys, no, Andy Reid does goal line live tackling drills in training camp. There's a reason why their team starts fast every season. Like because they hit in training camp. He plays his starters in the preseason, which some coaches would think is the dumbest thing of all time. But he's very consistent on who he is. He sticks to his word about what he tells us he's going to do, and players really appreciate him for that.
Yeah, I think the misconception, obviously, people love him, players coach in the sense that he's relationships with guys. But when it comes to practice, the other thing is if you're on the fence, injured or not, like you better be practicing. See, that is kind of where they separate, not in the, like Tom Coughlin, who obviously is a very successful coach. His meeting after a loss a little different vibe.
Oh yeah, he had longer team meetings though. His were like 30 minutes long, so it was always a little different. He would sort of like go through the game, and we'd show plays and whatnot of bad things that happened, and he didn't individually kind of call out players like Belichick. Like that's a very Belichick thing, like to individually call out players. And everyone's heard stories about those locker rooms. Excuse me, in those meetings. But Coughlin was fire. He had long team meetings, like 30 minutes. He did on Wednesdays, but his game plan day, he basically was in charge of doing the full scouting report. He got up in there and told us everything about the team we were playing. Where again, Andy Reid left a lot of that to his position coach, which is probably why a lot of his coaches are good NFL head coaches, John, because he gave him a lot of responsibilities to do that other coaches just don't give their coaches. Coughlin, dude, he's just so different than he is to the media. Like behind the scenes, man, just most coaches are, but it's very striking with Coughlin. Like you would hear him talk to the media, and then he talk to the team, and then you meet with him individually. It was just so different. I loved it. It was that kind of side that you only saw in the locker room.